The screen fades in from black, and we're immediately transported into the life of a man who seems to have it all but feels like he has nothing at all. His name is Alexander Hartwell, or Alex, as his few close acquaintances call him, and he's not just any billionaire CEO, he's the youngest self-made billionaire in modern history. But this isn't a story about success or wealth. This is a story about what lies beneath the polished exterior of power suits, boardroom tables, and skyscrapers that scrape the heavens. Alex sits alone in his corner office on the 75th floor of Hartwell Tower, the gleaming glass and steel monolith that bears his family name. It's late past midnight, and the city below glows with its usual restless energy. Neon lights reflect off the rain-slicked streets, casting an eerie yet mesmerizing dance of colors across the ceiling of his office. He leans back in his leather chair, staring out at the sprawling metropolis through floor-to-ceiling windows. To anyone else, this view might inspire awe or even gratitude, but for Alex, it's become little more than background noise, a constant reminder of how far he's come and how hollow the journey has been. His desk is immaculate, as always. A single fountain pen rests perfectly parallel to a stack of documents, each page meticulously organized. There are no personal photographs, no mementos, no signs of life beyond work. Everything in Alex's world is calculated, controlled, and compartmentalized. Even his breathing seems deliberate, measured, as if every breath were part of some grand equation designed to optimize efficiency. But let's rewind for a moment, shall we? Because understanding Alex requires peeling back layers upon layers of conditioning, ambition, and pain. And trust me, there's plenty of pain buried beneath that sharp jawline and piercing gaze. Alex grew up in a household where love was conditional, approval elusive, and failure unforgivable. His father, Richard Hartwell, was a titan of industry. Himself, a ruthless businessman who believed that weakness was a flaw to be eradicated. Success isn't given, Richard used to say during one of their many tense dinners. It's taken. Those words echoed in young Alex's mind like a mantra, shaping his worldview before he even had a chance to form his own opinions. From the age of 6, Alex's days were filled with private tutors, piano lessons, and endless lectures about responsibility. While other kids played outside, he memorized stock market trends and practiced public speaking in front of a mirror. By the time he turned 12, he could recite the annual reports of Fortune 500 companies verbatim. But none of these accomplishments earned him the warmth he craved from his parents. Instead, they only raised the bar higher, pushing him further away from the emotional connection he desperately needed. By the time Alex entered college, he had already built several profitable startups, earning millions before most people graduate. High school. Yet despite his financial achievements, he felt increasingly isolated. Friends came and went, relationships fizzled out, and mentors praised his intellect, but never truly knew him. He began to see people as transactions, opportunities to leverage rather than individuals to connect with. Love, compassion, vulnerability, all those messy, unpredictable emotions became liabilities in his eyes. After all, emotions couldn't be quantified or controlled, and Alex hated anything he couldn't control. Now, at 32, Alex reigns supreme over an empire worth billions. His company, Hartwell Technologies, dominates the tech industry with innovations that revolutionize everything from artificial intelligence to renewable energy. Magazines hail him as a visionary, investors worship him as a genius, and competitors fear him as a force of nature. But behind closed doors, Alex is haunted by a question that no amount of money can answer. What's the point of having everything if you feel nothing? As he sits there in his office, nursing a glass of scotch he doesn't really want, his thoughts drift to the countless sleepless nights spent chasing perfection. He remembers the sacrifices, the birthdays missed, the friendships abandoned, the dreams deferred. He thinks about the emptiness that gnaws at him whenever he achieves another milestone, only to realize that the satisfaction fades faster than the champagne bubbles at his celebratory parties. And then, almost imperceptibly, something shifts. Perhaps it's the way the city lights flicker against the window pane, creating patterns that remind him of constellations. Or maybe it's the faint sound of footsteps echoing down the hallway. Outside his office, a reminder that he's not entirely alone in this towering fortress of solitude. Whatever it is, Alex feels a strange pull, an inexplicable urge to step away from his desk and explore the source of the noise. Before he knows it, he's walking through the dimly lit corridors of Hartwell Tower, his polished shoes clicking softly against the marble floor. The building is eerily quiet at this hour, save for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead and the occasional whir of an air vent. As he moves deeper into the labyrinthine structure, he notices something unusual, a sliver of light spilling out from beneath the door of the executive bathroom. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he pushes the door open just enough to peer inside. What he sees stops him dead in his tracks. There, curled up on the cold tile floor, lies a woman asleep. She's wearing a simple uniform, dark pants, a faded polo shirt with the Hartwell logo stitched onto the chest, and her hands are clasped loosely over her stomach. Her face is peaceful, untouched by the stress and chaos that define Alex's existence. For a brief moment, he forgets to breathe. Who is she? Why is she here? And why does seeing her like this stir something deep within him, something he hasn't felt in years, if ever? If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. As Alex stands frozen in the doorway, his eyes linger on the woman lying asleep on the bathroom floor. She looks so out of place in this sterile, opulent environment, like a single wildflower, growing stubbornly through cracks in concrete. Her presence is jarring, not because it's unexpected, after all, cleaners often work late-night shifts, but because of the raw humanity she exudes. In a building designed to project power and precision, she embodies something softer, more fragile, yet undeniably resilient. Her name is Elena Morales, though Alex doesn't know that yet. To him, she's just another faceless employee, a cog in the machine that keeps Hartwell Technologies running smoothly. But if he could see beyond the uniform, beyond the surface-level assumptions, he'd find a story far richer and more complex than anything he's ever encountered in his boardroom battles or billion-dollar deals. Elena is 34 years old, though the lines etched around her eyes suggest someone who has lived twice that long. Life hasn't been kind to her, but she refuses to let it break her spirit. Born into a working-class family in a small town outside the city, she grew up watching her parents struggle to make ends meet. Her father worked double shifts at a factory while her mother cleaned houses during the day and sewed clothes at night. Despite their hardships, they instilled in Elena a deep sense of gratitude for what little they had and an unshakable belief that hard work could pave the way to a better future. But fate had other plans. When Elena was 16, her father suffered a severe injury at work that left him unable to continue his job. Without savings or insurance to fall back on, the family plunged into financial ruin. Bills piled up, creditors knocked on their door, and the once vibrant home became suffused with tension and despair. It was then that Elena learned the true meaning of sacrifice. She dropped out of school to take on odd jobs, babysitting, waitressing, cleaning offices, anything to help keep the family afloat. Years later, when her mother passed away unexpectedly, Elena found herself shouldering even more responsibility. By then, she had moved to the city in search of better opportunities, leaving behind the only life she'd ever known. The transition wasn't easy. The city was overwhelming, its streets teeming with people who seemed to move with purpose, while she stumbled blindly through unfamiliar terrain. But Elena adapted, as she always did. She rented a tiny studio apartment in a rough part of town, took on multiple jobs to pay the rent, and eventually landed a position as a nighttime cleaner at Hartwell Tower. Now, nearly 2 decades after her father's accident, Elena is raising a daughter of her own. Sophia is 8 years old, a bright, curious child with a laugh that lights up entire rooms. For Elena, Sophia is both her greatest joy and her heaviest burden. Joy because she represents hope innocence, and the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. Burdened because providing for her means working grueling hours, sacrificing sleep, and enduring physical exhaustion that would crush most people. Tonight, Elena didn't mean to fall asleep in the bathroom. She had been cleaning the executive suites when dizziness overtook her, a side effect of skipping meals again to stretch her paycheck until the end of the month, rather than risk fainting. And alarming anyone, she decided to sit down for a moment and rest. That moment turned into unconsciousness, and now, here she is, vulnerable and exposed, lying on the cold floor of a bathroom in the very building where dreams are made and shattered daily. What Alex doesn't realize as he watches her sleep is that Elena carries within her a quiet strength that rivals his own. While he built his empire through intellect, ambition, and sheer force of will, she survived hers through grit, compassion, and an unwavering faith in the goodness of people. Where Alex sees obstacles to overcome, Elena sees lessons to learn. Where he seeks control, she embraces uncertainty, and where he feels emptiness, she finds meaning, even in the smallest moments of beauty. For instance, earlier tonight, as she scrubbed the marble floors of the executive lounge, Elena paused to admire the way the overhead lights refracted off the polished surface, creating tiny rainbows that danced across the walls. Most people wouldn't have noticed such a detail, let alone appreciated it. But Elena smiled softly to herself, thinking how something as ordinary as light hitting stone could create something extraordinary. Moments like these sustain her when the weight of the world threatens to crush her spirit. It's this ability to find wonder in simplicity that sets Elena apart, not just from Alex, but from many others who inhabit the rarefied air of Hartwell Tower. She understands that life isn't about accumulating wealth or achieving perfection. It's about connecting with others, finding joy in the everyday, and leaving the world a little better than you found it. These truths may seem obvious to some, but to Alex, they're revelations waiting to be uncovered. Back in the bathroom, Alex continues to stare at Elena, his mind racing with questions. Why does she look so peaceful, despite the obvious discomfort of her surroundings? How can someone with so little possess such serenity? And why does her presence stir emotions in him that he thought he'd buried long ago? He doesn't have answers to these questions, not yet anyway. But as he quietly closes the door and steps back into the hallway, one thing becomes clear. This encounter will change him in ways he cannot yet comprehend. If you're intrigued by Elena's story and want to understand how her journey intertwines with Alex's, consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us bring stories like this to life, exploring the complexities of human connection in a world obsessed with status and success. The memory of finding Elena asleep in the bathroom lingers in Alex's mind long after he returns to his office. He tries to shake it off, telling himself it was just a fleeting moment, a blip in his otherwise meticulously orchestrated life. But no matter how hard he focuses on spreadsheets, emails, or the latest quarterly projections, her image keeps resurfacing. The way her chest rose and fell with each breath, the faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips, the vulnerability etched into every line of her body. It's as if she's taken up residence in his thoughts, refusing to leave. Over the next few days, Alex begins noticing Elena more frequently. At first, it's subtle. He catches glimpses of her moving through the corridors late at night, pushing a cleaning cart laden with supplies. She moves with quiet efficiency, her head bowed slightly, as if lost in thought. Occasionally she hums softly to herself, a melody so faint it blends almost imperceptibly with the ambient hum of the building. To anyone else she might appear unremarkable, but to Alex there's something magnetic about her presence, something that draws his attention even when he tries to look away. One evening, unable to resist his curiosity any longer, Alex decides to follow her. It's not intentional, not at first anyway. He tells himself he's simply taking a walk to clear his head after another marathon session of meetings, but his feet seem to have a will of their own, leading him down hallways and around corners until he finds himself trailing behind her like a shadow. Elena doesn't notice him at first. She's focused on her work, methodically dusting shelves, emptying trash bins, and mopping floors. Her movements are deliberate, almost meditative, as if each task carries its own rhythm and purpose. Watching her, Alex feels an unfamiliar pang of admiration. There's a grace to the way she works, a sense of dignity that transcends the mundanity of her duties. It's a stark contrast to the frenetic energy that usually fills the halls of Hartwell Tower during the day. Eventually, Elena pauses outside one of the executive conference rooms. She sets down her cart and begins wiping down the glass table. Inside, Alex hesitates for a moment, unsure whether to approach her or retreat back to his office. Part of him wants to turn around and pretend none of this ever happened, to bury himself in work and forget about the woman who's been haunting his thoughts. But another part, a part he barely recognizes, urges him to stay. Taking a deep breath, Alex steps into the room. "Excuse me," he says, his voice low but steady. Elena looks up, startled. For a brief moment, their eyes meet, and Alex feels something shift inside him. Up close, she's even more striking than he remembered. Her dark hair is pulled back into a loose ponytail, revealing a face marked by years of hardship, yet softened by kindness. Her brown eyes are warm and expressive, betraying none of the fatigue that must surely weigh her down. "Yes," she replies, her tone polite but guarded. She doesn't recognize him immediately, which surprises Alex. Most people in the building know exactly who he is, the billionaire CEO whose name is synonymous with power and prestige. But Elena seems unfazed, treating him like any other person who might wander into the room. Alex falters, suddenly aware of how awkward he sounds. He hadn't planned what to say, and now he's standing there like an intruder, unsure of his next move. "I saw you the other night," he blurts out finally. "In the bathroom." Elena's expression changes instantly. A flicker of embarrassment crosses her face, followed by a hint of defensiveness. "Oh," she says quietly, lowering her gaze. "I'm sorry if I caused any trouble. I didn't mean to fall asleep. I was just resting for a minute." No, Alex says quickly, waving a hand dismissively. "You didn't cause any trouble. I was just curious about you." "Curious?" Elena raises an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Why?" Alex opens his mouth to respond, then closes it. Again, how can he explain what he doesn't fully understand himself? Instead, he opts for honesty. "I don't know," he admits. "There's something about you, something different. You seem content, I guess, even though your job isn't easy." Elena lets out a soft laugh, shaking her head. "Content? That's a nice way of putting it." She leans against her cleaning cart, crossing her arms over her chest. "Look, Mr. Hartwell," Alex interrupts, realizing she still doesn't know who he is. "Alexander Hartwell." Her eyes widen slightly, but only for a second. Then she nods, unfazed. "Mr. Hartwell, I appreciate the compliment, but trust me, I'm not content. I'm surviving." Big difference. The word surviving hangs in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Alex feels a lump rise in his throat. He wants to ask her, what she means, to dig deeper into the layers of her life, but he senses that pressing too hard might scare her away. So instead, he changes the subject. "How long have you worked here?" he asks. "Almost 3 years," Elena replies. "It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills." "And before this?" She hesitates, as if weighing whether to share more. Finally, she shrugs. "Lots of things. Waitressing, babysitting, odd jobs, whatever I could find to take care of my daughter." Alex's eyebrows shoot up. "You have a child?" "A girl," Elena confirms. "Sophia. She's 8. For some reason, this revelation hits Alex harder than anything else she's said. The idea of Elena juggling motherhood and a demanding job makes her struggles feel even more real, more tangible. He thinks about his own childhood, the absence of warmth, the relentless pressure, and wonders how someone like Elena manages to keep going despite everything life throws at her. "What's it like?" he asks abruptly, surprising even himself. "Being a parent, I mean." Elena tilts her head, studying him carefully. "It's complicated," she says after a pause. "Some days it's the hardest thing in the world. Other days, it's the only thing that keeps me going. Sophia's my reason for everything." Alex nods slowly, absorbing her words. He's never considered having children, not because he doesn't want them, but because he's always assumed he wouldn't be good at it. His own upbringing left scars that run deep, and the thought of Passing those wounds onto another generation terrifies him. Yet listening to Elena talk about her daughter, he feels a flicker of envy. Not for her circumstances, but for the love she so clearly feels. They stand there for a moment, the silence between them charged with unspoken questions and emotions. Then Elena glances at her watch and sighs. "I should get back to work," she says, picking up her cleaning supplies. "Nice meeting you, Mr. Hartwell." "Call me Alex," he blurts out before she can leave. "And thank you for talking to me." Elena gives him a small smile, her guard dropping just enough to reveal a glimpse of the warmth beneath. "You're welcome, Alex." As she walks away, Alex watches her go, feeling a strange mix of relief and longing. Their conversation was brief, almost mundane, but it left an indelible mark on him. For the first time in years, he felt genuinely interested in another person, not because of what they could offer him, but because of who they are. If you're enjoying this unfolding story of connection and self-discovery, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support allows us to create content that explores the complexities of human relationships in ways that resonate deeply. Stay tuned for what happens next, because Alex and Elena's journey is only beginning. Over the following weeks, Alex finds himself increasingly drawn to Elena. It starts subtly, a casual nod in the hallway, a brief exchange about the weather, but soon evolves into something more deliberate. He begins timing his late-night walks through the building to coincide with her cleaning schedule, always finding an excuse to stop and chat. At first, Elena seems wary of his intentions, unsure why. Someone like him would take an interest in someone like her. But as their conversations grow longer and more personal, she begins to let her guard down. One rainy evening, Alex finds Elena on the rooftop terrace of Hartwell Tower. She's standing near the edge, gazing out at the city skyline as raindrops cascade around her. Her uniform is damp, clinging to her skin, but she doesn't seem to mind. There's a quiet intensity in her posture, as if she's communing with the storm itself. "You shouldn't be up here," Alex says as he approaches, his voice barely audible over the wind. "It's dangerous." Elena turns to face him, her hair plastered to her cheeks, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of defiance and amusement. "And you're one to talk?" she counters. "Aren't CEOs supposed to stay locked away in their ivory towers?" Alex chuckles despite himself, stepping closer until he's standing beside her. The rain soaks through his suit within seconds, but he doesn't care. For once, he feels alive, untethered from the rigid expectations that usually govern his life. "I could ask you the same question," he replies. "Why are you up here?" Elena shrugs, turning her gaze back to the horizon. "Sometimes I come up here when I need to think. The view helps put things in perspective." "What kind of things?" She hesitates, as if debating whether to share. Then, with a sigh, she begins to speak. "My daughter's school called today. They said Sophia's been falling behind in math. Again." Her voice cracks slightly, betraying the weight of her worries. "I've tried tutoring her myself, but I'm not exactly great with numbers, and hiring a tutor, well, let's just say that's not in the budget right now." Alex listens intently, his chest tightening with each word. He wants to offer solutions, to write a check or pull strings, but he knows those gestures would feel hollow, even patronizing. Instead, he simply nods, encouraging her to continue. "It's not just school," Elena adds after a pause. "It's everything. Rent's due next week and I'm short by $200. My car broke down last month and I still haven't fixed it. Sometimes I lie awake at night wondering how much longer I can keep this up. But then I look at Sophia and I remind myself that I have to, because if I give up, what happens to her?" Her vulnerability strikes a chord deep within Alex. He spent his entire life insulated from struggles like these, shielded by wealth and privilege. Hearing Elena articulate her fears with such raw honesty forces him to confront the fragility of his own existence. For all his power and influence, he realizes he's never truly understood what it means to fight for survival, not the way she does every single day. "Elena," he says softly, his voice thick with emotion, "why do you keep going? How do you find the strength to face all of this without breaking?" She smiles faintly, shaking her head. "Because giving up isn't an option, not for me, not for Sophia. Life may throw its worst at us, but we adapt, we endure, and sometimes, if we're lucky, we find moments of beauty along the way, like this view, or the sound of my daughter laughing, or even, she trails off, glancing at him sideways. Even talking to someone who actually listens. Her words hit Alex like a thunderclap. In that moment, he sees himself reflected in her. Not the billionaire CEO, but the lonely man desperate for connection. He realizes that despite their vastly different lives, they share a common thread. Both are searching for meaning in a world that often feels cold and indifferent. The rain intensifies, soaking them both to the bone, but neither moves to leave. They stand there together, shoulder to shoulder, united by an unspoken understanding. For the first time in years, Alex feels grounded, anchored to something real and tangible. And though he can't yet articulate it, he knows his life will never be the same. As the storm begins to subside, Elena finally breaks the silence. "You should probably get inside before you catch a cold," she says with a teasing grin. "I doubt your shareholders would appreciate a sick CEO," Alex laughs, the sound genuine and unrestrained. "Probably not," he agrees, "but I think I needed this. Thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me what it means to be human." Their eyes meet, and for a fleeting instant, Alex feels a spark of something he hasn't experienced in years. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he's found someone who can help him rediscover the parts of himself he thought were lost forever. If this story resonates with you, if you believe in the transformative power of human connection, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support allows us to bring narratives like this to life, exploring themes of love, resilience, and self-discovery in ways that inspire and uplift. The final chapter of Ethan and Clara's story isn't marked by grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Instead, it unfolds in the quiet, everyday moments that define a life shared, moments filled with laughter, compromise, and an unspoken understanding that love is not just a feeling, but a choice. It's a choice they make every day, consciously and deliberately, to prioritize each other above all else. And in doing so, they create something extraordinary, a partnership rooted in authenticity, resilience, and unwavering support. Months pass, and the changes Ethan and Clara have made in their lives begin to bear fruit. Ethan's decision to step back from the relentless grind of corporate leadership allows him to rediscover parts of himself he had long neglected. He takes up hobbies he hadn't touched since childhood, painting, playing the piano, even experimenting with woodworking in his spare time. These activities bring him a sense of fulfillment that no boardroom victory ever could. More importantly, they give him space to be vulnerable, to explore aspects of his personality that don't align with the polished image of Ethan Carter, CEO. Clara notices these shifts in him, the way his eyes light up when he talks about his latest project, the ease with which he laughs now, the absence of the tension that once seemed permanently etched into his features. She sees the man beneath. The title, the one who dreams and doubts and dares to try new things. And she loves him all the more for it. For her part, Clara continues to thrive in her new role within the company. Her innovative ideas lead to groundbreaking initiatives that earn the firm recognition as a leader in ethical business practices. She becomes a mentor to young professionals, particularly women navigating the challenges of male-dominated industries. Her speeches at conferences are met with standing ovations, not because of her accomplishments, but because of the authenticity and passion she brings to every word. Yet, despite her growing influence, she remains grounded, always reminding herself of the values that brought her this far: hard work, integrity, and humility. Their relationship deepens as they navigate these changes together. They learn to communicate openly, to listen without judgment, and to celebrate each other's successes without jealousy or resentment. They also learn to navigate conflict, not by avoiding it, but by addressing it head-on, using disagreements as opportunities to grow closer rather than drift apart. In short, they build a foundation strong enough to withstand the inevitable storms of life. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan surprises Clara with a trip to a secluded cabin nestled in the mountains. The drive there is scenic, winding through forests ablaze with fiery reds and golds. When they arrive, Clara steps out of the car and inhales deeply, savoring the fresh mountain air. The cabin is rustic, yet cozy, with large windows that frame breathtaking views of the surrounding wilderness. "This is incredible," she says, turning to Ethan with a wide smile. "How did you find this place?" Ethan shrugs, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Let's just say I have my sources." He takes her hand, leading her inside. The interior is warm and inviting, with a crackling fire in the hearth and a table set for two. A bottle of wine chills in an ice bucket, and soft music plays in the background. As the day turns into evening, they sit together on the porch, wrapped in blankets and watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky explodes in shades of orange and pink, casting a golden glow over the landscape. For a long time, neither speaks, content to simply exist in the moment. Finally, Ethan breaks the silence. "Do you ever think about how different our lives were a year ago?" he asks, his voice soft but reflective. Clara nods, leaning her head against his shoulder. "All the time. Back then, I didn't even know who you really were. Now," she pauses, searching for the right words, "now I can't imagine my life without you." Ethan smiles, his heart swelling with gratitude. "I feel the same way. You've taught me what it means to truly live. Not just exist, but live, and I'll never stop being grateful for that." They sit in comfortable silence. For a while longer, the only sounds the rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds returning to their nests. As the stars begin to twinkle in the night sky, Ethan reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small velvet box. Clara notices immediately, her breath catching in her throat. "Clara," Ethan begins, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "From the moment you walked into my life, everything changed. You challenged me, inspired me, and showed me what it means to love and be loved. I can't imagine facing the future without you by my side." He opens the box to reveal a simple yet elegant ring, its diamond catching the moonlight. Clara gasps, tears welling up in her eyes. "Ethan," she whispers, her voice trembling. "Will you marry me?" he asks, his gaze unwavering. For a moment, time seems to stand still. Then, with a radiant smile, Clara nods. "Yes," she says, her voice clear and resolute. "1,000 times, yes." Ethan slips the ring onto her finger. His hands shaking slightly with emotion, they embrace, holding each other tightly, as if afraid to let go. In that moment, surrounded by nature's beauty and the promise of a shared future, they feel invincible. In the weeks that follow, Ethan and Clara begin planning their wedding, a celebration that reflects their personalities and values. They opt for an intimate ceremony held outdoors, with close friends and family gathered under a canopy of twinkling lights. The vows they exchange are heartfelt and honest, promises made not just to each other, but to themselves, to continue growing, learning, and loving with every passing day. As they dance under the stars on their wedding night, Clara leans into Ethan, her head resting against his chest. "Do you think we'll ever stop surprising each other?" she asks, her voice playful but curious. Ethan chuckles, tightening his arms around her.